Superheroes are such a massive part of pop culture nowadays, thanks to the countless superhero films across cinema and television. But the stories of these characters were born in the pages of comics. It was the comics that built some of their most defining moments. Before movies ruled, these comic book stories redefined what it meant to be a hero. The death of Gwen Stacy. Before Peter Parker really hit the jackpot with the iconic redhead Mary Jane Watson, he was in a chaotic college romance with Gwen Stacy. She made her debut in The Amazing Spider-Man number 31, and after a rocky start, the pair endured a host of challenging times. But they were there for each other through it all. The demise of Gwen's father, Captain George Stacy, Aunt May's hospitalization, Harry Osborn's drug addiction, and more. Unfortunately, tragedy is often not far behind in Spider-Man's life. In June of 1973, the Amazing Spider-Man comic proved just that. 70s comic fans will never forget Amazing Spider-Man number 121, the night Gwen Stacy died. The Green Goblin kidnapped Gwen Stacy during his hunt for Spider-Man and brought her unconscious body to Brooklyn Bridge. Spider-Man eventually swung in to rescue Gwen Stacy, but Green Goblin hurled her off the bridge, leading to the heartbreaking but iconic moment when Spider-Man webbed Gwen, seemingly just in time, only to find that the love of his life was gone. The comics confirmed that it was in fact the whiplash from being webbed mid-fall that snapped her neck and ended her life. The Night Gwen Stacy Died, written by Jerry Conway with art by Gil Kane and John Romita Sr., was a major turning point in Spider-Man's story, but was also a first for comics. Before then, major comics had never killed a major romantic interest, and never due to the failure of the titular superhero. It shocked and upset a lot of people back then. Even Marvel Comics Stan Lee, who had agreed to the storyline in a rush, was upset by the passing of Gwen Stacy. Neither Conway or Romita had been able to confirm whose idea it was, but whoever came up with it ended up changing the Spider-Man mythos and comics in a big way. Don't feel too bad for Gwen, though. She has returned over the years in one way or another. In fact, more recently, she was reintroduced to the public as a popular superhero of her own, Spider-Gwen. Green Lantern, Green Arrow. The 70s and the Bronze Age of comics marked a turning point where comics would delve into more serious subject matters. Some of the characters that famously heralded this new age were Hal Jordan and Oliver Queen in the 1970s comic series Green Lantern, Green Arrow. In late 1971, Jordan took a break from cosmic threats to fight drug addiction in Green Lantern, Green Arrow number 85 and 86, Snowbirds Don't Fly, written by Dennis O'Neil with art by Neil Adams. While this was not the first time a comic book had depicted drug addiction, Amazing Spider-Man and Harry Osborn's pill addiction had unfolded the same year, but it was the first to seriously tackle drug addiction among youth as a social issue, with Green Arrow's protege, Speedy, aka Roy Harper, shown struggling with an addiction to opioids and arguably betraying Green Arrow because of it. The storyline began with Green Arrow fighting a group of crossbow-wielding addict-turned-thieves when they fired what looked to be one of his own arrows right at him. The arrows led him to his sidekick, Roy Harper, who was the only one who could have provided the addicts with the arrows. Queen and Jordan initially assumed Harper was working undercover, which they continued believing, despite Roy's best attempt at easing in the revelation that he is actually an addict. It wasn't until Green Arrow caught Harper in the act of getting his fix of heroin that he realized what Roy was trying to tell him. But in the end, it wasn't even Green Lantern or Green Arrow that showed any kind of support. In fact, Oliver Queen pretty much offers the complete opposite of support. It was Black Canary that took Roy in and provided him with care through that difficult time. The storyline defined norms and the previous stringent rules of the Comics Code Authority back then, marking the beginning of a serious shift in tone across comics, whose creators stopped being afraid of exploring more serious social issues, which meant opening comics up to a wider range of reader. Thankfully, after the events of Amazing Spider-Man, the Comics Code Authority revised its rules and DC went ahead with Green Lantern, Green Arrow's groundbreaking story. And what a story it was. No wonder the comic won the 1971 Shazam Award for Best Individual Story. Chris Claremont's X-Men. The Silver Age of comics in the 60s saw the X-Men established as a relatable, if somewhat goofy, family of outcasts. It was fun to read, but was more about unbelievable plots and cartoonish hijinks than fleshed out characters. Like in X-Men number 36, where the X-Men need to use their powers to earn gas money. It was fun for a while, but was inevitably heading toward failure. In came the Bronze Age and writer Chris Claremont in 1975, who injected the X-Men mythos with a world of drama and character exploration, which led to Uncanny X-Men in 1978 and the widespread success of the X-Men. Through the rest of the 70s and 80s, now iconic characters saw massive transformations. Magneto was given a powerful, tragic backstory, and Jean Grey went from being limited to work as a model to wielding the universe-consuming Phoenix Force. In fact, throughout his time with the X-Men, Claremont helped to introduce a number of major female characters, like Shadowcat, Mystique, Emma Frost, and many more. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created a wonderful superhero team on their own back in the 60s, but it was undoubtedly Claremont that provided that team with the narratives and admittedly melodramatic dialogue that needed to reach their full potential. In fact, he may have done too good a job because no one has been able to fully recapture the magic of the X-Men in adaptations, or the devastation and heartbreak of the Dark Phoenix saga. And they tried on screen, twice, but we don't like to talk or think about that. The Joker's Five-Way Revenge. By the time The Joker's Five-Way Revenge came around in 1973, the soon-to-be-named Clown Prince of Crime had been absent from comics for several years. It was partly because the Comics Code Authority meant Joker could not be the monstrous supervillain everyone recognizes today, and was instead limited to being a family-friendly goon who was only slightly more menacing than the average birthday clown. Readers, who were already dropping the Batman comic for a number of reasons, were not amused. But as he always does, Joker returned with a vengeance in Batman number 251, The Joker's Five-Way Revenge. It was writer Dennis O'Neil and artist Neil Adams' intention to return the Joker to his roots as a terror on Gotham City and not just the 70s equivalent of a YouTube prankster. The story began with the discovery of the corpse of one of the Joker's former gang, marked with a macabre Joker toxin-induced grin. The Joker had escaped from what was then Arkham Hospital, later named Arkham Asylum, and was out for the blood of his former gang, who he believed ratted him out to the police, leading to his capture. It was up to Batman to find each of those gang members first and pull them out of Joker's path of destruction. But the Joker proved too calculating and devious and managed to poison, blast, and hang 4 of the 5 gang members. Thankfully, Batman was ultimately able to track down the Joker to his evil lair and rescue the 5th and final gang member. The Joker had been shaped by many different events and writers over the years. In fact, it would be a crime for us to not mention DC editor Jeanette Kahn, writer Steve Englehart, and artist penciler Marshall Rogersman, who took Joker even further later in the decade. But it was Joker's Five-Way Revenge that started the Joker on the path to becoming Batman's one and only arch-nemesis and saved him from becoming a forgotten joke. Which comic book storyline do you think transformed our favorite heroes? Share your favorite comic book storylines in the comments below. If you're all about celebrating those classic, mind-blowing stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more retro goodness.